Hello and welcome. I'm Jennifer Shlomovich, and I specialize in helping busy women simplify plant-based living so they can improve their health, save time, and feel supported, even if their family isn't on board. Here on my channel, you'll find insightful interviews with inspiring vegans and practical tips on a variety of plant-based topics. Whether you're just starting out or looking to deepen your journey, my mission is to be your supportive resource and guide. Click on the subscribe button if you would like to join me in living a healthier, more confident plant-based life. There is a misconception that athletes can't thrive on a vegan diet, and this is far from the truth, which is what we are going to talk about today with my special guest, Simon Moreau. Simon became vegetarian to be a better athlete and then became vegan to show compassion for the animals. He currently lives on a postcard in Canmore, a small mountain town in the Canadian Rockies, where you can find him trail running, mountain biking, climbing, skiing, hiking, or simply training at CrossFit multiple times a week. When Simon isn't playing in the great outdoors, he is helping small business owners take control of their cash flow and build a business that supports their life. All this without the stress of not understanding the accounting and financial jargon. His simple and clear method helps them create a growing and profitable business. Welcome, Simon.
Hi, Jennifer. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. I'm so glad we met. We met a few weeks ago, I think it was, at a networking event.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to talk more about this because there's a lot of misconceptions about veganism. As we know, as vegans, we've heard them
hmm
all posted to us. But before we get into all of that, can you share what your vegan story is?
Yes, for sure. It all started with a lady about probably in around 2010, 2011. My girlfriend at the time, she was vegetarian, and she slowly introduced me to animal welfare, the environment concept around being vegetarian, which was fully not in my scope of consciousness at the time. I grew up in the typical suburban family, eating meat 4 times a day. As a young man who wanted to be strong, I was eating steak for breakfast sometimes, or I had a phase where I would eat 12 eggs a day or drink 2 liters of milk a day. So that was not in my consciousness at all.
Mhm.
So it took a very wonderful woman to slowly introduce me and open my mind to it. And after probably a year, at some point, I realized that I didn't eat meat for a full month. Because when we were eating out, I would get jealous of what she was eating. So I ended up ordering similar things to hers that was vegetarian. And I also moved in her place. And out of respect, I didn't bring meat in. And she was a fantastic cook. And to top that, I read the book Eat and Run from Scott Jurek, who's an ultra runner. He won the Western State 100 miles foot race 7 years in a row. And it was just crazy to me that somebody could do that on a vegan diet. But vegan was too far. So I became vegetarian. I thought I was saving the world. I thought I was the best human on earth. I kept doing CrossFit, I kept running, and my numbers stayed the same. I kept progressing. I didn't feel anything really different. Fast forward another year after seeing so many times that vegans were crazy, they were extremists, they were aliens. I watched a documentary called Earthlings. It was
Mm.
narrated in French by Georges Larac. In English, I think it's Joaquin Phoenix, the narrator. At the end of the movie, I was crying. It exposed all the industries that are not necessarily like meat related, but all the sub products. So the leather, like the shark fin, the egg, the dairy. And I was just sitting there on the couch. I was like, and I told my partner, I'm done. I'm going vegan. You're welcome to join me or not. And she asked me if I wanted to go ask have one last poutine. So that typical traditional Quebecois meal of like hot chips or like French fries with squeaky cheese and like gravy sauce. And I just said no. I was like, I can't do it. It will be against the decision I just took. And that was it. I was vegan. But I didn't know that I would spend the next month probably 5 hours a day at the grocery store reading every label because there's milk derivative products everywhere.
Hmm.
I had no clue before. um, yeah. So that next month we started to look for alternative. Like we were already having veggie burgers, so now it's like, well, it's not. We won't put cheese. We'll find a vegan mayonnaise. So we slowly withdrew a few elements, but it wasn't too. I guess it wasn't too hard for us. And to make sure we were doing it well, we also signed up for a cooking academy, like a raw vegan cooking academy in town that was partly owned by Georges Larac, the narrator of Earthlings. And about Georges Larac quickly, he was like that strong man playing hockey. He was like the policeman of the National Hockey League. And so for me, seeing him being seen as the strong man, being feared by everybody, being vegan, I was like, yes, okay, I can do it and still be strong. So I signed up to his cooking academy. And from there, I discovered so many ingredients I never heard of. I added so many things on my plate. I tried to do the raw vegan for a few months. And at some point, I noticed I was craving like comfort food, but I was feeling great. So that was the start of my vegan journey. And it's also the moment my parents thought I was going crazy and they were hoping it would become normal again. Unfortunately for them, about 13 years later, I'm still a bit weird and happy to be to be honest. So yeah, so that's how I started my vegan journey.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing it. And I can relate to elements as well. I didn't watch a documentary, but I did watch a documentary, but not that particular one or one so graphic. But I watched one. Originally, it started off for me with like health stuff, with having a dairy sensitivity and looking up dairy-free recipes and finding all these vegan recipes coming up. And you mentioned before, your girlfriend was ordering food that looked really great. Like I was realizing there's all this amazing stuff out there using spices I didn't normally use. And I started buying cookbooks and just making things and trying to eat better. There's heart disease and diabetes in my family. And so I wanted to start taking good care of myself, but I also love food. And so
Yeah.
I was figuring that all out.
Uh-huh.
And not and having to do it alone, right? I was the only one in my family who became vegan. I My husband and I, we have kids from our previous marriages and we have blended family. At the time our kids were much younger. And I had to, do this alone. And like when I saw the documentary Vegucated that really it showed some of the animal stuff, but a little bit, but it was enough
Yeah.
to really kind of like make me think about it more. I
Hmm.
think, we know where meat and dairy and eggs come from, but we don't think about also, we don't realize until we start looking into this more, just the
Yeah.
cruelty that's in the dairy and egg industry. Like, and being vegetarian is a good it's a better step. It's a step in the right direction. Like I was kind of like vegetarian, pescatarian, kind of,
Hmm.
you know, until it took me a couple of years to transition fully. Um, but I think, once you connect to the animals, you make that connection to the animals, that really it's like you don't want to go back. You can't, right? Like you didn't want the poutine, right? Like it's and vegan food has become so more advanced than it was even 15,
Hmm.
20 years ago. I feel like I
Yes.
mean, I've been vegan, it'll be 8 years for me this year. And it's come a long way where I feel like I'm not deprived or missing out on anything. I try to eat healthy, but if I want a treat, I know I can get a treat.
hmm
Um, and so I try to do like 80% whole food plant-based, and then the rest, 20% is whatever.
Yeah.
Um, Raw food, by the way, they make the best desserts. I love raw. When I moved from Brooklyn to where I am now a year and a
Okay.
half ago. I live an hour and a half from New York City, but I was in Brooklyn, and there's a place there that makes whole food plant-based desserts. And once in a while, I get these like amazing like chocolate cakes and things just made out of much better
Mhm.
ingredients. And
Yeah.
my non-vegan husband loved the desserts. But yeah, raw food I think is like the best for desserts and salad dressings for
Yeah,
me.
they're
That because
great.
there's like really good flavor in that. Um, but yeah, it's interesting how most of us go on this journey that takes a little time, and then we just kind of refine it as we go along. But it's like once we make that connection, it's hard to go back. Like you can't go back.
I can't imagine going back. This it's like for me the graphic images are printed in my mind and I
Yeah.
don't want to be part of that. And it was so strong the first, let's say, probably 5 years of being vegan. It's like every day my mission for the day was almost to stop animal farming today. So it was that very intense vegan. Like every time having meals with friends, I was to a point annoying. I lost a few friends. I learned along the way what works to like change people. Where like we all have
Yeah.
different things that change us or that like strike a chord in us. Uh, but yes, there's no going back for me. And this delicious food and it's healthy. To be honest, working in an office until a few years ago, people often bring treats, and there's always
Mhm.
eggs or dairy in it. So by default, I'm not eating them. So it was easy for me. It's like I'm vegan, I don't eat that. So to say no, but I'm sure I would have put a lot of weight just like every afternoon eating these non-vegan treats. So I think it's a byproduct of being vegan. I stayed fitter by default.
Yeah, that's a good point because I've worked in an office before I was vegan, and yeah, all the things that would come in. You don't want to pass up free food, right? But when you're
Yeah.
vegan, you have no problem doing that.
hmm
And yeah, it's interesting how we make that. It's kind of like The Matrix. You ever see the movie The Matrix, where
Yes.
when we first wake up and have that moment of realization, it's like you want to convert everyone to being vegan like right now. Like,
Yes.
why are you
Yeah.
doing this? Do you not realize what you're contributing to?
hmm
And so yeah, it's like this, you kind of go through a grieving process of just realizing things the way you do and having to come to a place of acceptance.
hmm
That the world isn't going to change overnight, but we can do our part by planting seeds. And like I find like that works better with people. Is meeting people where they're at, but it's so hard in the beginning because you go through this phase of being in shock, I think.
Yeah. I'm kind of jealous of people who became vegan after watching The Game Changer because it was such a positive documentary, not claiming that there's science behind, but it's all these high level achiever on
Mhm.
a vegan diet outperforming other high achiever, mostly because like they attribute it because they became vegan. So turning vegan for a positive thing versus seeing all these very graphic, distressing images. And I, a part of me is like, wish I could erase that and like
Yeah.
being a vegan because it's the best thing I can do to be healthy and a strong, fast, explosive athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's I'm sure that when you see a documentary like that, you can't get the images out of your head. Like
Mhm.
it's imprinted. I know from like just short videos I've seen, and or pictures that get posted sometimes. It just you can't once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Um,
there.
so what changes did you notice after going vegan?
The biggest change I noticed, it's when, let's say, if I would travel or if there was a lot of things at work and I didn't train really consistently for a month or two, I'll be able to put my shoes and just go outside and let's say run a marathon or like just do something that for most people, it's like, how the hell are you doing that? So I felt my level of fitness was not degrading as fast as when I was on a like eating like meat, dairy, eggs. That's probably one of the main difference. And I also noticed I recovered faster. So let's say one day I run a marathon, the next day I was able to go and do a long bike ride, or still go with my friends or do a full day of, let's say I ran a marathon in San Francisco. And the next day, I spent the day on my feet the whole day, visiting places, doing touristy things, and I was all right. Like I was not drained, I was not exhausted, I was not slower than anybody. So I think the recovery is faster, and the decline when I'm not um, training as hard is not it's not that much.
Mhm. So you noticed that you in some ways had more energy and just the ability to be able to do this without having to put all work as hard as maybe you would have had to before.
Yeah, yeah, in a sense. So
Oh yeah, that's interesting
yeah.
because you know people have this misconception that you can't be an athlete and be on a vegan diet. Meanwhile, there's
Mhm.
bodybuilders out there who are vegan.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of vegan athletes out there. And and I know too, like, inflammation, a lot of the processed food that people eat, even in the sports, like a lot of energy bars and things like that. Like if you read, you were talking about reading labels before. Like if when you start really paying attention, when you're a vegan, you have to pay attention to the ingredients, but then you start realizing the difference between like healthy food, like the things that you thought were healthy, and then they're maybe are not so healthy. I think packaging is very tricky. Like if you see something in a nature, green package with leaves on it, you automatically assume that it's
Yeah.
a very healthy
Yeah.
product, and then you look at the back and it's not.
hmm Yeah. For that, I would say shout out to Lara Bar with most of their bars with like three ingredients, dates. The one I eat the most, it's dates, cashew. I forget the third one. There's three ingredients. I have one missing, but it's super simple. And it's the sugar coming from the dates. There's no like chemicals like super long. That's everything that's in there. So yeah, you read all the labels and you see all these things that you're like, what are they? You want coconut oil or coconut milk? And it's like I'll just need what's in the coconut. Why do I have everything else? So
I'm a big fan of Lara bars. I get the cashew cookie ones a lot, which is like cashews and dates, and then
mhm.
there's like one with like chocolate chips in it, and
Yeah.
like I always try to keep one in my purse, like when I'm running around, because if I'm like, I need a snack or something, then I can like
hmm
grab a coffee or a tea and have my Lara bar with it, and I feel like I'm
Yeah.
having something good.
Yeah. When I'm going skiing, there's always an emergency bar in my pocket.
Yeah, they're really, really great.
hmm
Definitely what. And then another product I like to get is the Mary's Gone crackers. Have you ever seen that? It's a brand of crackers and they're made
No.
out of seeds. It's just like different seeds and stuff. It's also like you know what the ingredients are. It's just, seeds and seasonings and like, food. There's no oil in it. Because I try to minimize oil. So that's another thing I have is Lara bars and Mary's Gone crackers. So
Yeah.
shout out to them.
Oh, that's
Um,
nice. Yeah.
And then, so what are some of the challenges that you've experienced since being vegan?
Um, at the beginning, I was hungrier than I
Hmm.
used to be. Um, and what I realized is if I make oatmeal, I start to add more nuts in it. And all of a sudden, my oatmeal in the morning could last way longer. In my smoothies, I start to put white beans.
Ooh, interesting.
I'm using a Vitamix, so it's like it just it's just blending everything and it gets everything smooth. So you don't realize that you're eating whatever amount of beans you're putting in there, but you get all that fiber and that like these nutrients. So that just make that smoothie more nutritious than if you would just have fruits and kale, for example.
Hmm.
So these are things I realized that help a lot. Also, I went on and off eating organic and non-organic. And when I eat organic veggies and fruit and veggies, I don't feel as hungry
Hmm.
as when I'm using like non-organic. And it's probably because the non-organic one have way less nutrients. Um, yeah, sometimes I just struggle to justify the price, but you probably get more for your money in the organics than the non-organics. So that was in terms of like food. I guess one more challenge is traveling. One day I was traveling in Nicaragua and I was trying to avoid palm oil because in my mind, palm oil, it's not vegan just because of the destruction of ecosystems they're doing. So I was reading all the packets in Spanish that I'm not that good in Spanish, and I finally found one packet without palm oil. So super happy, bought it, started to eat it. And quickly I was like, that reminds me when I go to the Sugar Shack and we have these uh, pig ears. In French, it's oreilles de Christ, but I guess pig ears in English. So it's just pork. And I look at
Mm.
the packet and there's that happy pig at the front. I was like, oh,
Oh
like
no.
trying to avoid. There's so many things you try to avoid. And then I ended up buying meat. I was like, okay, I'm not dead. It's not a mistake I'm happy I made, but it is what it is. Um, so I gave the packet of chips to a little boy that was super happy. I felt better giving it to somebody to eat it than putting it in the bin because then it's a pig that died to go in
Yeah.
the bin. So uh yeah, so sometimes you try to like avoid things or make sure things are vegan and you make a mistake. And it's like, you know what? I'll just run with it. Um, ordering food at restaurants like, hey, like, is the burger vegan? Yes, and then it arrives with cheese and mayo. It's like you could have told me you don't know what vegan is. So it's sometimes always like asking the question. It's over time it gets tiring. Um,
Yeah.
and again, now there's food in your plate. If I eat the cheese, I'll probably be sick. So it's like I scrape it off and I still ate it instead of having that whole food being thrown out. Um, yeah, so that's the challenge related with food. But then with people, it feels when you're vegan, especially at the beginning, like all my conversations were about that. You would go to a restaurant with friends and you would not say a word about being vegan. You'll just be like, hey, I have the salad. And they will just start peppering you with questions. Sometimes people are defensive and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's like, you have your meat. I'm not saying anything. And like I ate meat for 20 plus years, so really I'm nobody to judge. I don't agree with it, but I'm here to see you, and we don't need to talk about that. Like, what have you been doing in the last month? So like sometimes just navigating conversation and just uh, changing subject. Like if the person's not open, there's no point. So um, yeah, there's been a few challenges with that.
Yeah, I can relate to those challenges. One time, I think this was like 2 years ago, My husband and I went to a salad place where you tell them what to make, and they make your own salad for
Yeah.
you. And I asked for tofu. And then I wasn't like watching them make like I like looked at my phone or something. So I sit down and I take a bite and I'm like, this tastes like chicken. And I spit it out because they have roasted tofu and roasted chicken, and I asked for the roasted tofu. So I went up to them and they made me a new one. I didn't like flip out on them. I just, said, "Hey, I'm vegan," and I asked for roasted tofu. We're really sorry about that,
Yeah.
and they fixed it. But that was like the
Hmm.
first time I put chicken in my mouth, and it was an accident. And sometimes these things happen, and
Yeah.
you know, and it wasn't intentional on their part. He's a busy worker. He heard roasted and probably just grabbed that. And they're right near
Hmm.
each other. They look similar, but different. And you just move on. I think,
Yeah.
intention is a big thing for me. I knew it was an accident, and they made me a new salad, and I drank like extra seltzer to try to like get the taste out of my mouth. And you move on,
Yeah.
and yeah, for me, family can still be challenging at times. My husband's very supportive. He's not vegan.
Hmm.
And now we're empty nesters. The last thing that I let go is because I was transitioning to being vegan and I knew my husband and kids weren't going to want to be vegan. I wasn't going to force it on them. I was the cook in the family, so I still made meat. And then
Right.
when everyone's now out in college, last year, I told my husband that, I'm done picking the meat. He'll have to make the meat himself. And so we have very minimal, like when everyone noticed they felt better drinking almond milk versus, dairy milk.
Mm.
So my husband has almond milk,
Yeah.
and we pretty much have an almost vegan household except for like he gets eggs and meat. Okay, um but I think too that one of the things I tell people, it's about progress over perfection. And
Hmm.
so, we all, sometimes, the main focus of the work I do is supporting women who want to eat differently from their family because it's challenging,
Yeah.
especially if you're the
Hmm.
cook. How do you make
Yeah.
it work? And and so I think, one of the things that's helped me is not comparing myself to what other people need. And it can be challenging, because there are vegans who can be very militant about the message. It
Yeah.
can be hard if you're a vegan who's in that place where you can't kick it completely out of your household because your family isn't going to transition. And so my whole thing is as long as people respect me for what I'm doing and you do you, I'm going to do me.
Hmm.
Um, and the communication has gotten better. When I do meet up with people, like my strategy is, like either if they know I'm vegan, they'll usually tell me to pick something. So what I'll do is I'll pick like three different restaurants to then give them a choice. Like I'll
Right.
find like a like I'll pick like an all vegan place, and then I'll find like a couple of not vegan places, but have like a nice extensive vegan menu that goes beyond just salad. And
Yeah.
and then I let them have a choice. And sometimes they pick the vegan restaurant because they're curious.
Hmm.
And whenever, especially like the desserts, like the food, they're always like, wow, you would never be able to tell that, because people think vegan food is just salad. So when they have these flavorful things, they're like, oh, wow, that's actually really good. And I remember like ordering vegan cheesecake, and friends that I've gone out with, curious would order the same thing. And they actually like the vegan cheesecake more because it was like lighter on the stomach. Because cheesecake made with dairy is very heavy and you
Yeah.
don't feel so great after eating. And and so I feel like those things are like planting the seeds, whenever I go to a family or I have people over, I always make the best vegan comfort foods, right? Maybe it won't
Hmm.
necessarily be the most healthy thing, but what would someone who's not familiar with vegan food, what would they enjoy? And making those things to show them what's possible. So I feel like that's something that I try to focus on is like showing people, hey, this is what's possible as vegan. We're not just boring salad eaters.
No, and there's so much, especially nowadays, if you want all that vegan junk food that tastes comfort food, you'll get it. Like it's not eat it on a weekly basis, but when there's special occasion, when there's people having a barbecue, these Beyond Meat burgers are awesome. People don't, if you don't tell them it's not meat, they don't even realize it most of the time.
Yeah. And
So,
there's like really good vegan hot dogs and sausages out there now too that
hmm
you throw them on the
yeah.
grill like
hmm
um and what are some of the benefits that you experience? Like you mentioned before that you noticed your performance improved in running.
hmm
Are there any other benefits that you've experienced since going vegan?
The benefits. Well, overall, it's living a more compassionate life. So when it comes to different like social and societal issues, I'm more open-minded. Instead of being like, this is what I'm thinking, this is my opinion, it's like, hang on, why are these people thinking like that? Why is this an issue? Um, so for example, right now I'm reading a book called Likeable Badass by Alison Fragale, and it's about how can women build their status in the workplace to access the same power as men that like, and for her power it's like you control a budget, you have a team, you have a seat at the table to make decision, and it's how do you um, link compassion and assertiveness.
Hmm.
Go back my little like unsecure boy growing up in a suburb, I'll be like, what are you talking about? Like men, women, we're equal, you just need to work hard and like get yourself to be respected. But now like I'm leading a book club and we like I kind of made the final call to choose that book more written more for women. But I'm learning a lot along the way. I'm looking forward for the conversation to understand somebody else's reality. So recently somebody said like, yeah, um, I used to always like look around and change my route going back home so people wouldn't see patterns. As a man, I never thought about that. So I'm seeking different perspective. And like right now, especially with the current political environment, it's like, okay, well, why are these people thinking like that? Why do they think that ABC decision is good? So instead of just go like all arms and like, this is bad, blah, blah, blah. It's like, let's go read, let's go listen to things. And I think it's more productive than being in my little bubble and think that I have the truth.
Yeah, I can relate to that also. I think it created another layer of awareness for me and wanting to understand more of the why that goes beyond animal welfare, right? Like what you were
Yeah.
saying with the political climate. Um, I'm finding myself also trying to understand more of the why, understanding the different sides of all the different arguments that are out there, and just trying to understand. And I feel like that's so important, right? Understanding doesn't mean you're agreeing with something.
No, yeah,
And I
I was
think
holding to say it. It's like, doesn't mean we agree,
right,
but
right,
you have your
yeah.
reality and your
Right,
idea. Yeah.
exactly, right? It's just trying to understand. It's kind of like, while watching, understanding about how the animal agriculture works, right? We're understanding it not because we agree with it. We just want to understand what's happening because we can't make any kind of change with anything until we understand all the various elements of why.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, understanding is very different than agreeing. They're two separate things.
Yeah.
And it's so and I think it's important to do that. And circling back to veganism, I think when we create that awareness with ourselves, and I've had this conversation with other vegans too. It's like you have this. other awareness now where you just see the world differently, you see everything differently. And
Mhm.
because of that, it goes beyond what the plate and what you wear. It just starts to trickle down into how you see the world. And I think um, I agree that that's an important benefit for sure.
Yeah. And then I probably saved a lot of money on clothes. Like you say, having that awareness,
Hmm.
um, trying to buy secondhand first, trying to reuse, or um, instead of going straight at the shop buying something new, I was like, well, how can I minimize my impact and use something that's already been produced? So I guess by default, I probably kept weight away and save money. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, when you have limitations, it makes you more creative too, right? And you
mhm.
become more resourceful. And I think those are also really great byproducts of being vegan. And when people ask me, well, don't you feel bad like you're missing out on something? And no, I don't, because I would rather eat a boring salad than eat a plate of something that involves suffering. And
Yeah.
so when you get to that point, like, if I'm missing out, if I feel like I'm being deprived later on, I'll go find something better and I'll go, make it up to myself
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah, it's so true how you become more resourceful and creative. I think that's why too there's so many amazing vegan foods out there, recipes and foods, because people
yeah.
got creative with the
Mhm.
limitations.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. And with the missing out part, let's say you say no to a steak. It would have taken you what, 10, 15 minutes to eat your plate and enjoy your steak. And then what? Then it's over. But what's the impact of that? So
yeah.
is it worth it? And on top of that, nowadays, instead of having steak, you can have something else very delicious.
Oh yeah.
Unless you're at a restaurant that they serve you tomato sauce with a few tofu blocks. That happened to me recently.
Oh no.
You're like, I'm super judgmental of chef, and I shouldn't. But I was like, as like I see chef as artist, and it's like, wouldn't you take the challenge? Sorry,
That's okay.
wouldn't you take the challenge to do something good? And instead, it's like, bah. It's kind of disappointing when
Yeah.
you think that often they're so stuck in a specific menu, and now somebody's like, "Hey, I'm vegan. Can you do something different?" And um, it's disappointing. You're like, "Oh, okay." Um,
Yeah, it's true. Like I've seen that too where you've gone to restaurants and one time we went to a recently opened place a couple of years ago. And I looked at their menu and they had a harvest salad. It was like roasted vegetables. And I was like, okay, that looks good. It was the
sounds
only vegan
great.
option, but you know what? It looked like a non-boring salad. So we
Hmm.
told our friend, yeah, sure, we'll meet you there. Well, apparently they didn't update the website. That was a seasonal salad. They weren't
Oh,
offering that salad anymore. They had nothing other than like French fries, and so we just ended up getting a drink and then we went someplace else for lunch. And that's the thing. It really doesn't take much just to have some kind of, even a Beyond Burger, right? Like
yeah.
keep it in the freezer on hand. Like there's a local diner that my husband and I go to. They don't have any
Hmm.
blatantly vegan options, but they have a salad there that I like, and they have a Beyond Burger. So I'll treat myself to a Beyond
There
Burger
you
on the
go.
salad.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh,
Uh,
I want to say I'm like similar to your chicken story. I was in a and shout out to the place in town. It's called Can Golf, and they have amazing food. And I had it's called the Bow Valley salad.
mhm.
So I was eating the salad, and there was roasted tofu in it. And I'm eating the tofu, and I was like, this feels like chicken, But I'm not super sure what chicken is supposed to look like anymore. It's been 13 years. I ate
Mhm.
chicken. So I asked the waitress, it's like, hey, like I asked for the vegan salad. Is it vegan? She's like, oh yeah, it's tofu. And then she went to get the chef, and he was so it's like, thank you. It's probably the best compliment I could have that she doubted that the tofu, the way I cooked it, might have been
Wow.
chicken. So there's some they are going out of their way and they are having that pride of like making the best food possible for everybody, like to cater for everybody. So hats off to Can Golf and Canmore if you're in the
Wow.
area.
Wow, yeah, that's really good to know. Yeah, it's great when that happens. I've been to family weddings and I told the server, is there a vegan option? And I went to a wedding like last year back in March, and they told me, yeah, it's just gonna take them about 30 minutes to put it together. And what came out was this beautiful plate of roasted vegetables and mashed purple sweet potato and like it looked so pretty. It looked better than everyone else. And there was
But
like
it's mine. You don't
it's
touch it.
mine, right? Yeah. And it had like grilled portobello mushrooms. It was so good and I was like so happy.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes that happens where you say something and yeah, if you have vegetables in your kitchen, you can turn it into anything. Um
hmm
so it's always nice when that happens. What are some tips that you have for anyone who is considering going vegan, or maybe they're newly vegan and they're feeling very challenged? Like, what are some tips
hmm
that you have?
I would say add before you remove.
Mm,
So let's say if you used to have a chicken salad, you can do half chicken, half tofu, and like your taste bud over time will start craving the new things. And there's also so much you can eat. So at some point it'll be you're like, well, that's too much food, so I'll just take the bacon out of that. Or I'll
hmm
just have the tofu instead of the ham, whatever. So that ways over time you create these new habits, and like we all have our go-to recipes, right? So you'll create these new go-to recipes that might take you 6 months, but it wouldn't be that one hard period that if you have a family, if you have a stressful job, if you're trying to do a lot after work, that you're like, I don't have the time to look for what to cook. I just need to execute and eat. So that by adding a few things here and there, you just slowly change your diet and to check in with your body. Like, am I feeling better? How ABC is making me feel?
hmm
A lot of people who are like 45, 50 plus that I know, they ended up giving up red meat just because it was too hard on their stomach. And they're like, I can't function after that. I don't sleep well. So they just end up ditching it. Now it's like, what do you replace it with? So some people will use chicken or other meat or fish, and some are curious. It's like, oh, what could I cook? I would say go get the cookbook Oh She Glows.
Ah, that was my first vegan cookbook.
It's so good. I have so many non-vegan friends who are raving about it. It's delicious, it's easy to make. It's you don't really need to go buy too many things that you don't usually have in your pantry. Uh, that was my go-to for a long time. Yeah. Um, and then another, oh, and the next one will be like try to eat the rainbow. So
hmm
if you're scared to not have enough nutrients, enough, whatever it could be, if you eat a diverse diet, you'll most likely be fine. You'll have all your essential amino acids that make up protein. So you don't need to have that protein in one go. You can just have all these essential amino acids. Um, Nuts and seed, like when I felt I would not be satisfied, I just started to increase, like, well, I'll put more beans, lentils, nuts, or seeds, and often it fixes it. Then
hmm
I feel it's like, okay, I had enough. Uh, And yes, you can have too much beans and you're like, whoa, I feel heavy now. Um, yeah, this will be the main thing. And there's Forks Over Knife, the game changer, who they put a lot of recipes and advice for people who want to have that healthy, active lifestyle. Rich Roll,
Oh, yes,
who
ritual.
I have his cookbook. I love it. I picked a few go-to recipe from it. And there are things like the sauce can have so much things that are very nutritious. I feel I'll eat a small portion, but I'm done. Like if you have a cheese sauce based of cashews to have like mac and cheese, you don't need a big portion because you have like half a cup of cashews. Uh, and it's like, you know what? That's plenty. I always have a bag either of spinach or arugula in the fridge, so it's easy to have a salad, uh, some spinach, olive oil, lemon, apple cider vinegar, and then whatever few like fruits I have, put some seeds. And it's almost like no matter what I'm eating that day, like I have a good hearty salad that gives me all the good nutrients I need. And also I have pretty much chef smoothie every day. And I got into these like superfood like cacao, maca, mesquite. So I just put a little bit of everything, some kale, berries, banana, and it's the same thing. If I eat just burgers and fries for the rest of the day, at least I had a very good, nutritious smoothie to kickstart the day. Um, so these are my few tips that I accumulated over the years.
Those are great tips. Add before, you take it away. Like I agree that's really great. Like I've always told people, like the thing I did was like focus on substitutions. But yeah, like for me, it started with the cookbooks and experimenting with recipes and doing those substitutions and getting and fork and Oshi glows and forks over knives were like those early contributors of helping me
Hmm.
see what was possible and making meals with those. And Oshi glows, like I made there's a black bean like Tex-Mex casserole with corn chips on top. Like my husband
Hmm.
loves that, right? And I brought it to like potlucks with non-vegans, and I'll bring some guacamole with that. And
Hmm.
nobody cares that it's not vegan. They don't even think about it. They're like, "Oh, this is good," right?
Yeah, yeah.
Who doesn't like beans with some vegan cheese and some, corn chips on top? And another, vegan cheese has a bad rap, but your taste buds do change. Like when you start and when you start eating healthy, like you crave the vegetables more, you crave the other
Mhm.
stuff. And when you have the vegan cheese, you're used to it. You adjust to that. Also, it's the cheeses have advanced a lot since
Yes,
the beginning of
yes.
veganism.
Uh,
And if you're making a pizza and you're putting cheese on sauce and you have your toppings, it's going to take on the flavors of those things and just give you that
mhm.
feeling. So,
Yeah,
um, yeah, there's just it's so much easier to be vegan now.
yeah.
But I agree. It's about adding to your life before taking away anything. Because
Yeah.
then when you do take it away, then you're going to feel ready. You're going to be more accepting
Hmm.
of that change because you want it to be sustainable. And eating the rainbow, absolutely. Like there's so many nutrients and vegetables and nut and beans are extremely healthy and there's a lot of nutrients in those things. So and and if you have it, a lot of us have that mindset where I ate crappy today. I might as well just finish the day eating crappy, right? And eat better tomorrow. But if you had a day of eating crappy, yeah, it could be so simple as having a smoothie when you get
Hmm.
home, or just having an apple, or just doing something to just give your body that healthy boost for the day.
Yeah.
Again, focusing on progress and not perfection. Um,
None of us is perfect, and there's a
yeah.
lot that happen in life. And unless you have a personal chef, uh, yeah, you'll make mistake, or you won't have the nutrients you need, or you'll have some junk food because you're tired, and it's okay. And you start again the next day.
Yeah, absolutely. And then yeah, when you're traveling, that can be challenging. I do a lot of research beforehand, and trying to like when wherever we're going, I try to map out, okay, where are the vegan restaurants?
Yeah,
What are we doing for the day and where and then figuring out what we eat around that. So
yeah.
um, yeah. Well, this has been really great chatting with you. I want to thank you for coming on today, sharing your story and your experiences. What are some resources that you would like to recommend for anyone watching?
I think I mentioned them all throughout our
Yeah.
conversation. So, um, the game changer, to have that positive outlook of what a healthy, strong vegan can be, just kind of to be inspired and to know it's possible. So that's a
Hmm.
big step. Um, Cookbook, Oh She Glows. I have right now one of my favorite. It's the Buddhist chef. He's from Quebec, and it's all that um, uh, comfort food.
Mm.
So I cook a lot of these recipes with friends who ask for the recipe. They're like, "Oh my God, what was it? It was so good." So I wouldn't eat it every day because it's not always healthy, but it's very tasty. So that's a good one to change people or open people's mind instead of talking about all the bad things. Like when you have conversation, if you can focus on the positive of becoming vegan over all the atrocities of the industries,
Hmm.
I realize people are more open to change. Um, Go figure out why. Um, the books, Eat and Run by Scott Jurek, he has a lot of vegan recipes there, and he called himself the grilled master. He's like,
Mm.
I'm trying to grill everything. So I really like that. Um, Oh, She Glows, the game changer. These are the main thing. And then there's a lot of, depending on what you want, there's a lot of coaches like you online that they might not be the mainstream coaches, but if you find somebody on Instagram or on social media that has what you want or you can relate with them, just lean into it and listen to what they say, and like slowly by consuming a little bit of content here and there,
Yeah.
you'll end up knowing so much about it. And I've add up recipes. I always learn a new recipes from friend that is like easy, a go-to. It's delicious. People always rave about it. Um, yeah, that would be the main thing I can think of right now.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And I'll also include the links in the notes below. So this way, if anyone's looking to wants to find those easily, I'll have them there. Before we wrap up, can you share a little bit more about your business and how you help people?
Yes, thanks for asking. Um, I like dreaming. I'll
Hmm.
say I'm a dreamer, and when I see small business owner, often they open their business out of passion. They have something beautiful to share with the world, and they want the freedom of owning their own business. But quickly, as they open a commercial space, they hire people, they realize the business is owning them, and the expectation or the promise they had from being a business owner, they find themselves a few years down the track, and they're not there at all.
Hmm.
Sometimes it will be better for them to go work at McDonald's at minimum wage. They would effectively make more money than being a business owner. So I work with them to establish what their best life is. What's a 10 out of 10 day for you? Or what's your best year? How often do you want to travel? Where do you want to live? Uh, how much time you want to spend with your kids? So we identify that lifestyle and the money that they need to support that. And once we have that secured, solid, we turn around and we look at their business. So it's how much money your business needs to generate to support that, and what does it need to look like so you can do that. And then we put some cash flow target, and every month we follow very closely what the results are compared to the targets we set. And based on my analysis, I give them 1 to 3 actions to do for the month that will really make a big difference in their business. So for them, they can keep being, let's say if they're doing pottery, they can keep running their pottery school and studio. Their bookkeeper do the books. I look at them. I sit with them. We have that strategy conversation. And I keep it using terms and keep it easy so they don't feel they need to understand accounting. Let's keep it clear, simple. They are the expert in their industry. So I'm kind of the sounding board challenging them to identify these 3 things. Like I identify the areas that will have the biggest impact, but most of the time they come up with the solutions. And then because we set, it's like, well, if you just do these 3 things next month, your business will improve. It's easier for them to take action knowing that their time, money, and energy is already spent on the right thing. So then every month we review, and then every year we review, and the dreams always get bigger or they get towards retirement. So I really take the worries of the finances out of their hands, and we dream together and we set clear actions to get where they want to be.
That's great because money and finances is extremely overwhelming.
It is. We kind of like we go to school, we never talk about money. Where I grew up in Quebec, it's you don't talk about money, religion, and politics. And these are important things.
They are.
So people get into business, especially where I live, people are passionate, so they just go and do it. And it's like, have you done a business plan? Have you done cash flow projections? Like, what are you talking about? So I love the passion and the energy, but finance is often at the bottom. They are scared. It's emotional. They feel it that it's a reflection of who they are. And it's like, well, let's go slowly together to understand it and to use it so you can live your best life. And often people to understand that profit is important. Like without profit, you don't sit in business. So if you start a vegan restaurant, you need to make sure you're profitable so you're there in 10 years and 20 years. And you change people, you influence them to become vegan. You save animals' lives, you save the environment, it's better for the public health, and blah, blah, blah. So profit is not a bad thing. It permits you to do the beautiful things that you want to do.
Yeah, I think so many of us have challenging relationships with money. And yeah, and it can be really intimidating. So it sounds like you're doing really important work helping people follow their dreams and live a life that's in alignment and take away that overwhelm that happens with the
Yeah,
money part. So yeah, that sounds really great. Um,
thanks.
and what's the best way for people to connect with you?
The best way to connect is on LinkedIn. So Simon Moreau, Moreau. You'll recognize my face. There's a few Simon Moreau on LinkedIn. You can send me an email at simon@liftoffprofit.com. And at the moment, these are the best places to find me. There's other things in the background being worked on at the moment. So there'll be more places to find me eventually.
Great. And I can also include your LinkedIn profile and your email address in the notes below this video so
Awesome.
you can connect with Simon easily. Well, Simon, it was really great having this chat with you. I want to thank you again for taking the time out to have this chat with me and my audience. And I want to thank you all for joining me today, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye for now.
Thanks for having me. Bye.